about prison reform and your experiences dealing with the judicial system here in New Jersey after the death of your brother from COVID-19 while incarcerated. Can you take us back to the incident that caused your brothers to be incarcerated?
Well, I really don't like to talk about that too much because it was kind of like the judicial system, they didn't weigh it properly. My brother did commit a crime, but the underlying issues that surrounded that crime wasn't looked at when it came to sentencing. So what happened was my brother and his wife, at the time of crack cocaine, they were using. And to the best of my knowledge, something happened where they got into an altercation and they started fighting or whatever, in a drug-induced craze. And my brother's wife, she grabbed the knife and she came at him. My brother grabbed the knife from her, and while they were fighting, she got cut. And she was cut on her neck and she bled out. So he saw when she was bleeding, he got scared being under the influence, and he didn't know what to do, so he just ran. He didn't seek help for her or anything, he just ran, and she bled out. And later on, he was apprehended, and he was placed in jail. And so when he went to court, and the story was being told or whatever, they didn't consider the fact that it was kind of like something in the heat of passion or in the moment of being in a drug-induced stage that this crime occurred. So the judge didn't consider anything like that. He just said he was guilty, and he sentenced him to 100 years, which was unheard of for anybody. I had never heard of a sentence like that. So it just bothered me for the longest, and the whole time that he had been incarcerated, I always did research, and I would look up cases, and I saw...
Wait, Trena, let me ask you about that, because in your bio you talked about a case that you found that was similar.
Absolutely.
Everything was similar, except the charges were not.
But it really wasn't similar in this case, because my brother's case, he didn't intend, it wasn't premeditated to kill his wife. It was an accident and a drug-induced struggle or whatever. The case that I referenced to you was about a Dr. Nice who he planned the murder because his wife was having an affair with the gardener, and he approached her about it.
Right.
So she stopped seeing him, and then she started seeing him again, and when he found out again, he waited for her to come home one night in the garage, and he beat her in her head. He bashed her in her head, you know, and just continuously beat her until her body was lifeless. And then he took her and put her in the car, and he went through all of these changes. Like, he even took a pair of his shoes and got a boot size, 2 sizes larger than his, and glued it to the bottom of his shoes. So that was premeditated. He knew what he was going to do.
And that was here in New Jersey.
This was in New Jersey, and Mercer County. And he took her to a place and drove her car in a ravine or whatever and walked back. They even found in his garage the cut up rubber from the bottom of the shoes or whatever. So he was guilty. He just out and out murdered her. He got 10 years. He only did 8.
And your brother was sentenced
and my brother
100.
was sentenced to 100 years. So their cases weren't similar in a sense that Dr. Nice's case was, it was premeditated. He planned on killing her. My brother, he didn't set out that day to say he was going to kill his wife or whatever. It was just an accident, and it happened.
Right. So that was typical of the judicial system that we know of.
Oh, absolutely. Just giving out lengthy sentences to black men just to get rid of them. You know, this is just another form of systemic racism. Like, we'll do away with them, and we'll just pat the counterpart on the hands and tell them not to do it again and go on your way to start a whole new life.
Right. That's the institutional racism that by which all of us live, many of us.
Absolutely.
Once COVID came to New Jersey, were families who had loved ones incarcerated, were you all notified by the state, or were you notified by the prison about how they were going to protect the prisoners?
Not at all. The only thing that, because we watched the news and it was concerning when they said that it would run rampant through the prisons because of the close quarters. And so we could only assume that because we got the memo, everybody else did, from the CDC, that warning that they gave that, you know, that they needed to take precautions in the prison and do all they can, especially for the inmates that were vulnerable and that had underlying conditions and that were elderly. And so, you know, we just assumed that you got the same memo we did. My brother wasn't here with us, because had he been here with us, we all took precautions on everything. If he's in the custody of the state of New Jersey, that means he's in protective care. So we trust that in that protective care, you guys are doing all you can. The Department of Corrections is doing all they can to safeguard these individuals. And then knowing that his history, because he had been there for 29 years, so, you know, he'd been back and forth to medical, you know, he has tuberculosis, diabetes, hepatitis C, high blood pressure. So medical, you know that. So you know you're people that are vulnerable. So it's up to you to safeguard them and start maybe pulling them to the infirmary or separating them and just keeping them out of harm's way.
So
there was no plan at all. He was still in general population. And that's where he left when 2 days, I think it was, the inmates had to go get the guards because he couldn't breathe. So he had no symptoms or anything, like nothing came on him, or even if it did, I don't remember him ever saying anything like, I'm sick, I'm this, that,
So
and
you
the
were
other.
in contact with him prior to the pandemic hitting?
Right.
You
In fact, I think my last visit with him, he was saying that, oh, the guards are walking around here with masks on and we don't have masks and we don't have hand sanitizer and we don't have this. And we're watching the news and they're saying that we're supposed to have all of these things and, you know.
So the guards were wearing masks and the administrators there, but the prisoners were not
The
wearing
prisoners
masks.
didn't have masks. Nor did they have the hand sanitizer or, you know, that they could just go and wash their hands whenever they touched anything or whatever, nor did they come in and sanitize things and wipe things down.
So did they have anything in place prior to COVID for prisoners with underlying health conditions? Like, was there any kind of plan, like if you had somebody who maybe had a compromised immune system, like separating them from the general population? Was there ever anything like that?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, they did not have that, and my brother never spoke of anything like that, because had they have had it, he wouldn't have still been in general population.
So he fell ill suddenly. COVID came in the area, what, February, March? And so take me to then. So April,
don't remember the exact date. I just remember the date that he passed away. But I guess one of the inmates called my sister and said that they had taken him out. But she didn't get the call till the following day. So he was already gone 2 days before we even knew where he was at. Nobody called.
Gone, you mean?
Going to the hospital.
The hospital. So
they had taken him to the hospital. Nobody called. Nobody said
called.
anything or whatever.
So an inmate called.
An inmate called and said that he was taken to the hospital. And then I think on maybe April 8th or the 9th, I was watching TV and I saw that Governor Murphy had said there was an inmate that had passed away from COVID at New Jersey State Prison. And then that really, you know, raised alarms for me, because after my sister said, I got the call and the guy said that he was taken to the hospital or whatever. So now I'm calling. So I'm calling the prison to find out what's going on, and they're saying that, well, we don't have any information on that. I said, but nobody ever even called to say that he was in the hospital or they had taken him to the hospital. We don't call unless they're really bad off. And I'm like, really bad off? Like, it's a pandemic. You need to let us know as soon as possible.
And if you're sending somebody to the hospital,
right.
you assume that they're bad off enough to contact the family.
So she was like, well, you have to call the social worker, and she has to give you permission to call the prison. So now we're jumping through these hoops or whatever, and I have to call there, and she's like, well, I can't give you authorization. You have to have your mother call in. My mother is distraught, and so I'm making the calls for her.
You had to have your mother call because your mother is guardianship?
Right, she has guardianship, right. So then I had to three-way her and get her on the phone. So they were like, okay, once I got through to the hospital, and they were like, well, we only want one family member to call because people are calling the hospital. So I said, well, my daughter is a nurse, so I'm not going to understand what the doctors are telling me, but she will. So let me just get her on the line. So I had to get her on the line to give authorization. Then they had to go back. At the time, my brother was coherent, and he wasn't doing bad. And so
at what point did you find out why he was there? Because you still are not told why. You don't know that he has COVID.
Absolutely. So what they're saying is they have done the COVID test. When he first got there, they said they have ruled out COVID. And they thought it was pneumonia. And so they went to my brother and they said, your niece wants to be the one to take the reports for you every day. Is that all right? So he said, yeah, that's my niece Trena. She's a nurse. So yeah, she can get the reports for me. And so after that, I think the next day or two, he just started slipping. It was like, oh, when my daughter would call, they would be like, oh, well, he had to be intubated, because they said, well, we told him that he might have to be intubated, and he just, she just said, he said, okay.
So how did they rule out COVID?
Because they hadn't done the test yet.
So they didn't do the test. So when did they?
So the next day, when he got there and they did the test, they ruled it out. But the next day when it came back, it was COVID. So all of a sudden now it's COVID, and it's so bad that he has to be intubated, like just overnight, which I thought was rather strange when he is coherent and, he's aware of what's going on, and letting now he has to be intubated. And I think that when she said that we told him that, your family said they love you, they're praying for you, this, that, and the other, and he got teary-eyed. And I think when she told him that he had to be intubated, I think he knew at that point that he wasn't going to make it. Just by, by what they were seeing on the news and everything, because my brother always watched the news and we always talked about everything. So I think at that point that he knew that a lot of people weren't surviving when they started intubating them, and how that machine would do damage to their lungs and things like that. So I think at that point he knew, and I always have faith. I'm always the one that's in denial. And that's why I said, talk to my daughter, because I'm praying and I'm sending cards every day, and I'm telling them to read him the cards. I'm sending cards like every 2 days or whatever, keep fighting. And they will go back and forth and talk to my daughter, every day. It will be one day he's up, one day he's down. Temperature's here, temperature's gone, blood pressure up, it's down. There's lung damage, this, that, and the other. At one point they were like, we can't do the plasma treatment because inmates can only have certain medications. And that's another thing that needs to change, because whether you're an inmate or whether you have whatever kind of insurance anywhere, whether you're behind the walls or out here on the streets, it shouldn't matter. If the doctors take an oath to save a life, they should try to save every life they can. So based on your question, they did say that they were treating him for COVID. They were giving him medication.
So they were treating him for COVID, even though they didn't think it was COVID.
Right. So I just wanted to be clear on that. They did say that they were giving him the medication for COVID, but they had ruled it out.
They ruled it out. And then once they got the results back, that's when they intubated him. Is that what happened?
Right.
And then how long from that point then did he succumb to disease?
From that point on, it was just touch and go every day. He would be up, he would be down, he would be up, he would be down. I remember the 22nd, I think, my daughter called to get the report, and the 21st, and they told her that he wouldn't make it through the night. And that was like the longest night for me because I wasn't ready for that. And I just think I stayed up like all night. I think I walked the floor all night just praying and asking God, just to keep him.
Yeah.
And all night, just all night. And then I guess earlier that day, since we didn't hear anything, then I finally laid down. And on the 23rd, I told my daughter, I said, call to get the report. And so when my daughter called to get the report, they said that he had died. She must have called about 4, I think. And they told her that he had passed away like 2 o'clock that day.
So they didn't contact the family? They don't contact the family after?
The prison, nobody called. We called them. Like at 2 o'clock, I would have thought that we would have got a call.
Right.
Because if you say he passed away at 2 o'clock, why are we calling in at 4 to find out that he's passed away already?
And you're calling in.
And we're calling in to get that report.
So tell me what happened after that. So after he passed away, and I know your family was mourning and you were grieving, particularly because this happened so quickly, what kind of answers were you getting from the hospital regarding the process from the time you went to the hospital, contracted COVID, your concerns that he just did not get the care that he should have gotten pre-contracting COVID. What was the process after that?
The process after that was, like I said, the whole time they had stayed in contact because my daughter was calling for reports. So they would tell my daughter what kind of medications they were giving him and what they were doing. So she kind of she knew,
right.
Okay. The one we had a problem with was the medication, I can't remember the name of it, the hydroxy, whatever that.
The hydroxychloroquine.
That one right there. That, I don't know if it had been tested or whatever, but she said that that's what they were using. And we were like, well,
and I don't think that
it was an experimental drug.
That was not
it wasn't even approved at the time. It was an experimental drug.
Yeah.
Nobody called and asked, should we give him that or whatever.
Right.
We didn't have a say in anything.
Right.
They were making the decisions, but you made the decision that he couldn't have plasma.
Right.
And the doctor specifically told my mother, she said, what they're using in New York that seems to be working is plasma.
Right.
But she specifically told her that he cannot have plasma because he's an inmate. And I thought that was odd that the doctor would tell my mother something like that.
So you don't know if it was actually the COVID that killed him or the medication, because there was medication used. And like I said, I don't believe that was approved in April, because to date we're still going back and forth with that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And for him to come in one day and be coherent and know what's going on, and then 2 days later, he's not able to speak or anything, and now you're intubating him, and she said he's aware, but that's about it, because he had the tube in his throat. He couldn't talk or say anything or whatever, and it's very painful, just that in itself.
So he suffered. So after his passing, I know that you've become very involved in prison reform. So tell me how that began for you. Which agencies did you reach out to? Because again, I know you went through the mourning period, but then after that, I know you wanted answers. Your family wanted answers. So
what I did was I was doing a lot of posting on Facebook because I was very angry and I was upset. And was one guy that I'm Facebook friends with. He said, "Did you reach out to Reverend Boyer?" And I had heard of Reverend Boyer, but I didn't know who he was. Reverend Boyer is the founder of Salvation and Social Justice. And so at the same time, while I was reaching out to Reverend Boyer, he was reaching out to me because one of the ladies that I used to go to church with, I think she works with youth on prison reform. And she had saw the list of people that had died from COVID, and she saw this name, Parks. And so she called another friend, and she said, "Do you know of Darryl Parks?" And she was like, "Yeah, that's Trena's brother." So then she reached out to me, and she said, "Trena," she said, "I didn't know that, Darryl Parks was your brother." And she said, "Tell me what happened," and this, that, and the other. So she was in contact with Reverend Boyer as well. So it was like a three-way thing. I was reaching out to Boyer, he was reaching out to me, Retha was reaching out to me for Boyer.
Also. Where is
Reverend Boyer is in South Jersey. I just can't it escapes me now.
But he's in Jersey. He is in New Jersey.
He is in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
He's the pastor of a church down in I can't call the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, in South Jersey. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So he's the founder of Salvation and Social Justice. And so with him, he works with UCLA, what is that?
ACLU?
ACLU, and it's another organization called CAKE. I can't tell you what the acronym means or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And they're involved in prison reform?
They're involved in a lot of, not just prison reform, but just a lot of social justice issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I got connected with them. Then they started setting up town meetings to talk about a lot of the prisoners that had passed away. And I think at that point it might have been like 43 and maybe 2 guards or something in the New Jersey State Prison, because New Jersey is supposed to have had the highest rate of inmate deaths. And I think still to this day, they are still the highest.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think that is the result of? The failure to separate prisoners who are at risk, or not having the guards who are coming in be protected? Because how would the inmates get COVID?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think that what happened was, I don't think they had a contingency plan in place. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that they took it serious to act upon when the CDC warned them. Because I know in Seattle, Washington, I have a friend whose friend is in prison, and immediately when they heard that, he's an older individual, and they started separating them.
Right.
So in New Jersey, they just they did nothing.
Right.
They failed to move on it, and so I think that was the biggest problem. Like, nobody took it serious.
In addition to the fact that the prisoners were not wearing masks.
And the prisoners were not wearing masks. They didn't have the sanitation that they needed. They weren't sanitizing the cells or doing everything. Right. Probably from being understaffed. I don't know. But these things were not done. Right. So to me, there was nothing put in place to just move. Because I was like, I couldn't understand why, if you know, your medical unit knows, mm-hmm. They have a MAR, you know all of your individuals that have underlying conditions, so it shouldn't have took maybe a day or 2 to start moving them out. Mm-hmm. And it was like nobody did anything. It was just like they just sat there and they just waited for this thing to just, like Pastor Boyer said, he called them incubators. Right. He said they were just incubators for COVID.
So what have you done with Reverend Boyer? I know you've been involved with contacting Governor Murphy. I
constantly contact, every time I think about it, like probably today when I go home, I'll probably be just send him another email. I've sent him email after email after email. Even our senator here for our district, in the 14th district here in New Jersey, Senator Ben Gopal. Mm-hmm. I was on Facebook with him, and he was saying, you know, I will give you Governor Murphy's contact information. I said, it's not going to work. I said, I've been contacting him since April.
And you've not heard anything?
And I haven't heard anything from him. He said, send me the letter and I will make sure he gets it. Mm-hmm. So I drafted out another letter. That same day that Vin asked me for it, I sent it to Vin. And Vin is good. He is a man of his word. He does try to work for the people. So I know if Vin got that email, the governor got it also. Mm-hmm.
What about Sheila Oliver? You know, oftentimes, and I say this, we're always so excited when we have black folks in high places. We have a black female lieutenant governor, and I would hope that this would be something that would be alarming to her and make you, reach out to her office.
Well, I haven't even tried to reach out to her because I believe that she is just a token. And I don't think that she would do anything or shed light on anything or go against anything, because I have criticized that administration from day one of having a reckless disregard for human life. Because to this day, and I keep saying it, I have asked Governor Murphy in those emails to even send a condolence. I said, you've been, having photo ops and press briefings on COVID. and you're shouting out other people and their families or whatever, but you have yet to say one name from any of those individuals that have died in the custody of the state of New Jersey. You have yet to call any of the families. You haven't called my family and even said, I'm sorry. And even if you sent a card, all you have to do is stamp it and put it in the mail and just say, you know what, the state of New Jersey agrees with you. We're sorry for your loss. You haven't done that. And even so, I've asked him because my brother and those other individuals died in the custody of the state of New Jersey, which is protective care. You didn't protect them. So therefore, you need to, the least he can do, like I told him, is offer all of them a posthumous pardon. I mean, that's the least you can do. I mean, it's not hard. All you have to do is just do it, sign it, and put it out there. And I have yet to hear from him on anything. And I will still continue every day to send him an email and ask him for those posthumous pardons for all of those individuals that were not sentenced to death, but they were sentenced to death under his administration because he oversees the state of New Jersey Department of Corrections. Right. So I'm concerned about opening up a gym or opening up this, all of these other things, but you're still not addressing the issue with the prison. They have a bill on the floor, and I think what they were trying to do, the ACLU and Salvation Social Justice, what they were trying to do was give credit, like a year's credit to inmates. So a lot of them will be able to get out if he signed that order. But I think they fought them on it, and I think what they did was they walked them back from 12 months to maybe 8 months. And so that bill is waiting on the floor. It's stalled. So they're still waiting for that. And they're also working, trying to decarcerate the youth facilities as well as some of the adult prisons also. Because a lot of individuals there, they have like minor offenses, like drug offenses or violation of probation. I was speaking with a lady, her son was set to come home 2 weeks before he died. 2 weeks.
Before he died from COVID.
Before he died from COVID.
I have so much respect for you, dear sister, for your strength, for your determination. Just to hear you talk about the research that you had to do. I know you sent that over to me, the research that you did with your case, and I just think about how disturbing it is as citizens of this state that we have to conduct our own research in legal matters when you're talking about human beings. Your residents that belong to your state, Governor Murphy.
Absolutely.
So, in closing, I just want to ask you what the current status is of your investigation. I know this is a legal matter, correct?
So, actually, with the legal matter, the attorneys that I have talked to, everybody, I don't know if nobody wants to fight with the state. That's why I think I asked on the Facebook page, where are all the black civil rights attorneys, okay? Because in speaking with some of the attorneys that I've been introduced to, some of them were like, oh, I can't take the case, I can't take it. Like, I've been going back and forth. I did file a tort because there was an attorney, a civil rights attorney in Philadelphia. And what he told me, he said, I can't take the case, but let me tell you this. He said, because a lot of people don't like to deal with the state. Right. He said, but what you will do is, he sent me the form and everything. He said, I'm going to send you the form, fill it out, and send it for a tort. And the tort will allow you to sue at any time. Right. He said, you have to get it in before 90 days because the statute of limitations will run out. But I want you to file it as soon as you copy it. Right. File it and send it certified and send it regular mail because the state has a way of losing things. Yeah. So that way you know that they have it. So he said, do that if not anything else, and then, continue to try to seek counsel. He said, I can tell you now that a lot of people are not going to want to do it. No. And even with the ACLU, they said, well, we work on policy and things like that and bills and stuff like that. But you do know people also. So they did directly to a couple of people, and they were like standoffish too. They didn't want to do it. Right. I talked to my attorney, who's only a criminal attorney. He's not a civil rights attorney. and he was basically saying, oh, there's nothing that you could do, and you know, because it's a pandemic, and you know, and I told him, I said that, well, why are all these lawyers running to the nursing homes and, you know, representing some of the people that have died and some that haven't even died? I said, my brother died, so why is nobody trying to take that? And I think it's all a part of this whole systemic racism thing where, you know it's wrong, you know it didn't have to happen, and you're still playing the same game. There is somebody out there that will take this case, and I'm pretty sure that it is, because the lawyer in Philadelphia, you wouldn't have gave me the information for the tort to try to get the ball started. So I'm still looking. I'm working with a brother who was previously incarcerated. He got accepted into a law school, so he's in law school now.
Yeah.
So Kevin is working with me. He has a female attorney, I think, from Philadelphia that he said will probably take the case.
Yes.
So we're just, as long as he said, as long as I have that tort filed,
Yes.
then don't worry about it. So now where I'm at now for them is getting the medical records and the prison records for my brother that I've been trying. In fact, I just made another call today. Like, I've sent them everything that they've needed, and I haven't gotten them yet, so I've been calling back and forth, and they're saying like their office, it's only like 2 people that work 2 days a week, and they can't be in office at the same time, so they're blaming everything on COVID as far as me getting the information. So I said, okay, I'll call back every week. So that's what I'm trying to do now, is get those medical records and his prison records to get to this paralegal.
What about the media? Have you contacted the media?
The media, we've been through the media with Pastor Boyer, the ACLU and Salvation Social Justice, and they've had stories about it. And so, like I said, a lot of things, it comes to the forefront and then it goes away.
Right.
Because when it comes to us, it's not an issue.
It's not an issue, and we know that Black lives don't matter, and we continue.
Well, so they seem to think.
We continue with this slogan, Black Lives Matter, and you know, when we're talking about the judicial system, we have to understand what real power means. And real power means that when we have situations like this, we have a force to support us. And I think, like we talk about New Jersey, when it comes to this judicial system, from what I understand, attorneys don't want to go up against the state because the state is like their employer almost. And then they get blackballed. But see, we, black folks, have to position ourselves where we can't worry about getting blackballed if we want to deal with these issues to make it better moving forward.
So it's almost a case of where I probably have to go out of the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
But I'm going to be paying more because if I have to get somebody out of state that has to fly in or whatever, these are all the expenses that I'm going to incur.
Right. And which what many of us don't have, which is why we're in the situation we are.
But moving forward, I'm, you know, like I said, it's somebody out there, and eventually, you know, the tort is filed. That's all that matters.
Right.
You already know that what my intentions are.
Right.
So
they're on notice.
Absolutely.
They're on notice.